Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to do a little exposure hack in Photoshop. So guys, the last thing that I do in any of my edits is a levels bump, as I call it, and my fan on my Mac has just kicked up really high. Sorry about that. So the levels bump, essentially what that does is, how I explain it, is it kind of closes the gap between the highlights and the shadows, so the whites and the blacks in an image, and it's really useful for finishing off your files, making sure that the exposure and the contrast is kind of at a pleasing level, and it also makes sure that your images aren't too dark or too bright. So what you need to do basically is go ahead and finish your edit to a point that you're happy with. Make sure that you click on the uppermost layer and then go ahead and add an adjustment layer, and the adjustment layer is going to be a levels. By the way, if you haven't already, please do press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. I always forget to mention that and then add it in, so I'm just doing it now. So with the levels adjustment layer added there, you can see a histogram. So this is the histogram here, which is showing you from blacks to whites with midtones in the middle, exactly where the data is in this image. So what the peaks are, basically that's how many pixels fall within that range of the histogram, and your histogram is split into blacks, shadows, midtones, highlights and whites. So a little handy tip for in Photoshop is if you hold down Option on your keyboard and click and hold down the arrow, so I'm holding down the whites arrow at the moment, you will see as you bring it in where your clipping is. So anything that is white is clipped, there is no data left there. So if I let go now, this is completely white here. This is pure white. So we don't want that. We don't want clipped highlights anywhere if we can possibly help it. Eyes are kind of okay in catch lights, but other than that, absolute no-no. So holding down Option or Alt if you're on a Windows, click that rightmost arrow and start to bring it in. Now what I'm looking for is anything going. So I've got a little tiny dot on the middle of the image, which is about at Bright's eye. We've now got the bokeh circles starting to clip. The front of her chest is starting to clip. And as we bring it over, we can see more and more. What we want to do is we want to bring that arrow in to the point where it's just before something clips. And the bit that I'm focusing on the most is that bokeh circle up in the top. So I'm going to back off a little bit and go for about there. With that done, I then want to go ahead and grab my blacks arrow here and see if I can bring it in without clipping anything. I'm starting to get yellow through on her underside. So to be honest, I'm going to leave it out at 0. So if you turn on and off that layer, what that's doing is that's closing in the gap between the whites in the image. So that's basically creating a good level of contrast and exposure, and then from this point onwards you can be confident that your image is beautiful. Let's go ahead and see what this works like on another image that is darker in nature. Okay, folks, so we've got this image of Pippi up on the screen. We're going to do the exact same thing. So we'll go down to the bottom here. We're going to go for a levels adjustment layer. We're then going to go up to the histogram here, grab onto the rightmost arrow, hold down Option or Alt, and start to bring that in. Okay, so the back of her neck is clipping now, and I think the bottom of her little nose hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on until a little bit more starts to clip. So I think I'm going to go till about here, and then what I'm going to go ahead and actually do is use the mask that is put on here and make sure that that is selected. Grab onto a brush, so you can press B. We've got a white mask, so we need a black brush. Make sure the opacity is at 100, flow at 100. We can zoom in a touch too. And we want to have a nice soft brush, and then go ahead and paint. Okay, and bridge of her nose also went. And then we'll just feather that off a touch, maybe 30%, 40%. And just bring that down. Okay, so with that done, if you're ever in doubt as to whether you've overcooked the situation, just go ahead and grab another levels adjustment layer stacked on top, holding down Option on the keyboard and clicking, and you shouldn't have any clipping at this stage because this layer is masked at the point of clipping. So the difference in the exposure is quite extreme, but technically this is a good exposure, good contrast, and you can go ahead and flatten your image, safe in the knowledge that the exposure is good. Awesome. And that is the levels contrast bump. If this has been helpful, please do remember to press the subscribe button. I will see you all again really, really, really soon.